Heavenly Father, we just thank you that we can all be together today and study your word and hear about your love for us and what our responses can and should be, how we can best learn about those. Father, we just ask that everybody here be lifted up and attuned to you, which is precisely what this chapter is saying. So, Lord, we thank you and we pray all these things through our friend, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay.
Hello, nice to meet you.
What? Our friend Jesus.
Our friend. Anyway, okay, I don't know. Does Ellen have to come here and turn it on? I can't remember, but that's okay.
It's
I think it's on.
it's working.
It's okay. It should-
Ellen, are you there?
Or anybody else?
We don't have
Anybody
any,
there?
we don't have any visitors. from
No, we're
elsewhere.
good.
It's just, it
We're
says recording, so.
So there's nobody on Zoom?
No,
Well,
there wasn't last week.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know
as
if there.
nobody has popped up.
No, so we'll just go
I
ahead.
haven't seen any
Um,
fish sounding
have a
on
nice
the
little-
Let me on.
Well, let me start with an apology that, I am not Robin, I am not Allison, and I am not a biblical scholar. So I tend to approach scripture from my point of view, which is that of a psychotherapist.
That's all right.
And,
We
you know,
all come
and
with our
we all come with our hangups.
you know, and our gifts.
And our gifts. Okay, well, at any rate, so, one of the things that I do know about Samuel is that he was the last of the judges. And he was also the only one to be not only a judge, but a high priest and a prophet. He starts out child of Hannah, who hasn't been able to conceive a child. And, so she goes to Eli and she talks to him about, praying for her that she could have a child and that she would give that child.
Can you imagine
Now,
that she had been wanting a child for so long and finally God gives her one and she has to give it away?
Well, she made
To the
that promise to
temple.
God, when
Yeah.
she was praying.
I know,
exactly.
but that was a
And-
mistake. She shouldn't have done that.
Apparently it
Oh,
worked
I had
out
to say,
so
oh, I'm
well.
sorry.
Just
I'm sorry,
kidding,
God, I didn't mean it.
you might have changed the whole course of Christianity. At any rate,
Anybody could, it'd have been
it might have been. So she holds to her word, which, had to be tough. And so he
I've
goes
always
on.
loved this story.
I know,
I
to
have
be,
too.
to be schooled by
I know,
Eli.
I know.
And at any rate, it's a beautiful story and it's talking a lot about something we talked about. Was it last week that I was here and we talked a lot about discernment? I can't remember. I think it was. And how do we know? How do we know what's the voice of God and what's perhaps if you will, a bad idea of my own? So at any rate, let's start out as Allison and Rob do with reading this scripture. And will someone do the first paragraph
All
for us?
right.
Okay, Maeve.
Reading from what? First Samuel? Oh, First Samuel. I see that there. Okay, now. Now the boy Samuel was ministering to the Lord under Eli. The word of the Lord was rare in those days. Visions were not widespread. At that time, Eli, whose eyesight had begun to grow dim so that he could not see, was lying down in his room. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called, Samuel, Samuel. And he said, Here I am. And ran to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. But he said, I did not call. Lie down again. So he went and lay down again. The Lord called again, Samuel. Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. But he said, I did not call you, my son. Lie down again. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord. and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. The Lord called Samuel again, a third time, and he got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." Then Eli perceived that the Lord was calling the boy. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, "Go lie down, and if he calls you, you shall say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Now the Lord came and stood there, calling as before, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant is listening."
Mhm. One of the things that I found as I was reading is when it says that Samuel did not yet know the Lord, that what that was talking about is that he had not had any experience where he felt that God had spoken to him. And then I think interestingly, it talks about, and anybody with more biblical knowledge than I have, speak up. But it talks about how the word of the Lord was rare in those days,
Mhm.
and that no one had been spoken to. Can you back up
Vision
just
is
a second
first.
so I can see Laura? Thanks. You know, and no visions, and you know, it clearly was a.
Sort of like today. I mean, it's hard to.
If
I mean, we
anybody
don't-
had, they didn't share it with the rest.
Well, and a lot of people at that point in time were not listening for anything. I mean, they were surrounded by things that had their attention a great deal more than trying to listen for God, which is, you know, has happened. Unlike today, yeah. But
I have already apologized that I'm not the biblical scholar of our two priests. I was
Yeah.
waiting on
yeah.
I should have known you'd say that. At any rate,
Exactly.
now, okay, would anybody read this second paragraph there? Okay, Laura.
Then the Lord said to Samuel, "See, I am about to do something in Israel that will make both ears of anyone who hears it tingle. On that day I will fulfill against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house from beginning to end. For I have told him that I am about to punish his house forever for the iniquity that he knew, because his sons were blaspheming God, and he did not restrain them. Therefore I swear to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be expiated by sacrifice or offering forever." Samuel lay there until morning. Then he opened the doors of the house of the Lord. Samuel was afraid to tell the vision to Eli. But Eli called Samuel and said, "Samuel, my son." He said, "Here I am." Eli said, "What was it that he told you? Do not hide it from me. May God do so to you and more also, if you hide anything from me of all that he has told you." So Samuel told him everything and hid nothing from him. Then he said, "It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him."
It's interesting that that Eli knew that what God had said to Samuel was not something he wanted to hear, because he said, "Do not hide it from me. May God do so to you, and more also if you had anything." So he expected that what God had said he was going to do to Eli.
He knew that
He knew that his
son
son,
was acting.
and apparently
Right.
God had told him he was going to punish him for that.
And you know, it's what it's what they call passive mentoring. To me, the hero in this is Eli. One of the things that I read was everything that Eli had been about, everything that he had been about in his life was negated in pressing to hear that one thing from the Lord. But he totally trusted God, and it's like, that's it, he's spoken. And he became also at that point the ears for Samuel. Look at what Allison wrote down at the bottom. Who listens with us? Spiritual directors, spiritual mentors, spiritual friends, spouses, partners, Anamkara. All these folks help us to hear the voice of God. We need others as a place to check things out, to ask questions, to seek guidance and wisdom, to pray together.
Amen.
That's it.
Right.
And that's the passive mentor. And that's also, you know, what a church community is and can be about. Certainly, I believe our church community is that. But how about you guys? Do you have, and that's one of the questions I think in the book too, who listens for you? Who's the checkup person that you can bounce things off of and trust as you go forward? Anybody
There are lots
volunteer?
of them.
Our spouse is one.
Yeah.
Okay, Marcia, I
Yeah.
think you're
Can't
right.
be always.
Yeah, that's true.
Shut up and sit down.
And
Yeah.
they're always right. So
And they're always right.
I would put in there, round it that way, nature. And nature's not speaking back to you exactly, but it sort of is. I think if you're
Just
sitting
not
in
in
a,
words.
if you're sitting in a serene place, even in the rain, or something.
Uh-huh.
It's preparing you to hear.
But it's helping.
Would you say that?
I think there's some reflection of some sort.
I think
It's sort of helping you be still and know.
Yeah.
And
And another thing nature does to me is nature always makes me think.
Always make sure that they.
Makes me think about, you know, I kind of start, my spiritual journey starts with creation, understanding creation the way I do. And to look around in nature helps you understand the magnificence of creation. And so I put nature in that to me. So.
I'm just always so blown away by every single different flower is so intricately different in color, shape, form, and it's like the whimsy of God. I mean, he just creates such beautiful things that are unnecessary, but for our pleasure.
I'm not sure. I think they're unnecessary.
I think they're necessary for,
I think there's a bigger sense of his order that we don't understand.
yeah, well, I don't think you understood exactly what I meant, but I hear you, yeah.
Do y'all know, the character here in town, do y'all know Timmy Womack?
Yeah.
He's funny. He comes to the barn a good bit, rides his bicycle in. A long timer, I think, maybe.
Is
from-
this
from
same
here.
Timmy who used to plant apple seeds?
Probably.
Yeah, he had a coffee shop.
Yeah.
at one time.
Well, he came in week before last, and he was telling a story about something about acorns. And I said, well, I think, Kate, you were there when this was happening. And I said, well, Timmy, let me tell you how I see an acorn, because they're pretty important to me. And I said, I lived in Charleston, worked at Fenwick Hall Hospital, which was on Johns Island, not too far from the Angel Oak. Well, the Angel Oak is a giant live oak. Takes 8 of us holding hands to get around the
I
trunk.
don't think
You know,
I think it.
maybe I was there with a
20.
group of big girls.
I think, no, I just think it's so expensive.
I don't know. That's what we did. But I would take the women's depression unit, it was called at the hospital, down to Angel Oak. And, this was a lot of gals who, because it was a substance abuse hospital, had spouses that were substance abusers, and they had pretty low self-esteem and couldn't drag themselves out of bed too much. And anyway, so I put them all in the van, and we go down to the Angel Oak, and I had everybody walking around the tree, and I said, pick up an acorn while you're walking. And so they would pick up an acorn, and then there was a bench, a picnic bench at the far end of the property. And so I went there, had them all sit down, and I said, do me a favor, take that acorn and hold it up like this and look at that angel oak behind it and know this. Everything that is that tree is in that acorn. That's how it started. So everything that is that tree is right here. And anyway, I said, I would do that with a sperm and an egg cell, but I'd lose my job. So at any rate, Timmy Womack reaches in his pocket, pulls out a sterling silver acorn. It's about this big and hands it to me. Like just at the end of that story, like, oh my gosh. And he said, keep it, that's for you.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, wasn't that strange?
Well,
it was
I don't
like-
know, strange is the word I use.
Yeah, I know. And it, to me, it felt like a confirmation to a story that I've used a lot with a lot of people.
Or maybe it was a confirmation of what you do just in general.
Who knows? But he brought that in and apparently has similar ideas about it.
Timmy saw that in you. He thinks the same thing.
It was pretty amazing. Okay, and what other thoughts on that? Anybody?
Well, I don't think that, I think that a lot of time people, that God speaks to you, it doesn't have to be with some sounding message. It is, sometimes it's with the different people that path crosses yours and it brings you up short, or it makes you stop and pause. And it may not be, go do this or don't do that. It may just be a aha, or a phew.
Yeah.
Just somebody that just gives you a moment to want to thank God for that person being in your life or just passing. And, I think a lot of people pass through your life and sometimes you take time to act on that energy or what they bring to you, or you can just keep going and you don't. God doesn't insist that you stop and deal with that person. But when God is speaking, I think you do. There's just something about the
You
person.
can always look back to that passing of each other when it's been followed up on and it's bloomed into a relationship or something.
Something that makes you feel safe.
That you
something that
know
makes
it
you
was
smile.
God at that, looking back on it, you know that God orchestrated that.
Now, there was a reason for you to meet that person.
Mhm.
That person may not draw the same feeling from it. I mean, the huge impact from it that people have, on others. I mean, Sharon was one for me without embarrassing her. I mean, the first time I met her, I just was like, it was one of these, aha, this is a person that,
God was nudging you.
well, God just said, you're going to be okay because you just met this person that is gonna be right here. And, and she is just right here, and that's why when she was, this is so crazy to be talking about this, but when she was in such pain, it just put me into absolute a tailspin, jealously saying, wait a minute, you cannot have this pain because you're there in case I have pain. I can't, how can this be happening to you're going to be okay person, and
Sharon's your Eli.
well, yes, she is one of probably the most recent. I have had others
Yeah.
in my life that have made me go, well, God put them there for a reason. I mean, somebody that just made me feel okay or made me realize that things were happening that I needed to participate in. So
I think sometimes God does speak clearly. I love Eleanor's story about going into the chapel and kneeling down in front of a statue of Jesus and saying, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And finally she heard, you are enough. I just love that. You are enough. And he, that's a case of God putting a thought in your mind. I had one when I was praying anxiously over one of my children or grandchildren that I stress over. And God said, I've got this. Just like in our vernacular, I've got this.
Right.
And so I say, ooh, I got to remember that.
I think all these stories kind of show that the way God speaks to us is limitless. I mean, there's so many different ways. Nature,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
person actually speaking to us.
It's not a voice you hear, but
Yeah.
it's
And
a
again, we can't
communication.
imagine, there's always going to be a new way that we couldn't even think of that he speaks to us. We just
Mhm.
have to be open to it.
Right.
So.
Yep, that is true. All the different ways that are represented right here,
Mhm.
people's
And with
experience.
the, Maurice, probably with the exception of you, whom I've not had the pleasure of getting to spend much time with, the other 5 of you at this table have served as that for me to bounce something off of, whether I'm comparing what you're going through with what I'm going through and hearing how you're handling it. Whether it's, do I want to join DOK? It's endless, but I have spoken up about a problem or had a question that I've learned from you all, which kind of brings me then to my next question is, if you were going to have, I'll say electrician, since they've been here this morning, had to come and rewire your house, okay? You might, what are the things you might do to check them out? You might ask friends in the neighborhood who have you used? You might say, okay, I got this. How do you trust that when you have felt led, perhaps, to come to another person, what are the,
When you feel a need to go somewhere,
Yeah. And how do you
What-
discern who to go to?
and if it's important, if it's a step you're going to take in your life or something you need to learn about, what are, if you will, the qualifications you want that person to have? Does that make sense?
yeah,
What are the qualifications to discern if this person is
open. and
Speaking for
honest
God to
and
you.
know that he's connected with the Lord.
Mhm.
And,
Does it have to be connected to the Lord?
well, I think I'd get a better straightforward answer if I thought it was
Well, maybe
connected.
you would, but maybe that's not the way God wants
It
to
may not
communicate with
be.
you sometimes.
That's a
I
good
have-
point. Or
I have
that
to have
other people can.
the first step.
Well,
Yeah,
I don't
it's
think
like-
it's all up to us. We have to be open, but I think God does things in a lot of different ways.
Oh, I do too.
Sometimes we may, even after the fact, we may not understand it, so, how it happened.
Well, in my searching times, I certainly have gone to friends. I have gone to any number of the clergy that I have been close to through the years. And some I would go to and others I would not have.
I think that's the norm. I think we would all say the same thing.
Mhm.
But I'm
You
just saying
sense
that I
in a-
think sometimes it may happen, not by our choosing, but by some.
Mhm.
So in other words, maybe there's a street person that tells you something. Maybe it's somebody you're sitting next to in an airplane and all of a sudden they say something that clicks with you.
Right.
You have no idea in hell what their background is. So why though sometimes do you feel like, whoa, I can trust that.
That was wisdom.
That was wisdom. That was,
Yeah, it can be.
what do you think?
God can speak through.
Right. I've been a member of this church, some of them, I've had 3 or 4 months now for over 20 years. And Ray Kaminsky took me over when Betty and I came up here, and I think Culpepper was the priest.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And right on that. And so I've been with all of them since then, and certainly enjoyed each one of them. Rob, of course, is going to leave by himself, but he's one of 2 that I've met in my lifetime that are just incredible. But we get something special, I think, from every one of our ministers also.
Mhm. So what does that scripture mean about entertaining an angel unaware?
That could be God's angel sent to you You don't know it is Scott Singsel, but turns out to be.
Maybe dressed in wolf's fur.
That's right.
Well, there's a paragraph in here on page 80 where it says, I guess Jeremiah must have written it. You will seek me and find me. When you seek me with all your heart, I will be found by you and will bring you back from captivity. And I mean, I'm not taking that in the literal sense. I'm taking it in the, you know,
Yeah.
and I thought that was really a neat paragraph.
It is.
I would really like to take the liberty to tell y'all a story, if you can bear with me. It was 2 days before Martin Luther King's birthday, in 1986. And I was driving down a road on Johns Island near Charleston. And
To play tennis with me.
to play tennis with Maisie, who was down at the camp. And I'm going down this old road, and I go through a section. It's a lot of folks who had probably been on that island since their families were slaves. The two black men were sitting on the side of the road, and one was in a wheelchair. Now, a couple of you have maybe heard this story, and if so, just bear with me because I think it's relevant to this. One was in a wheelchair. He had no legs. The one standing next to him was just, a tall guy. And they were chatting. And I noticed them and I thought, they have something for you. And I rode on by them. And I thought the whole time, I was just plagued. There's something that those men have for you. So I went about 2 more miles down the road, found myself turning into a driveway, backing out, zooming back up the highway, doing a U-turn in front of them, pulling over into the weeds. Those real high weeds right there where they were sitting. I got out, I had on a sweatsuit and sneakers and I'm looking like, as close as I ever could come, to country club. And wasn't that funny? No, that was
I'm trying to visualize.
I can see it.
No, it was thrift store, I'm sure, but nice. Anyway, so I pull over, I get out of the car, I'm walking up to them, they're just staring at me, and I sit down in the weeds in front of the wheelchair. I look up, I said, I don't know why I'm here.
Oh my word.
And that's all I said. They both nod. And the guy in the wheelchair said, well, I'm Mr. Washington. The man standing up said, I'm Mr. Washington. I shook both their hands. I said, I'm Sharon Stricker. And I felt really compelled to stop because I think there's something I'm supposed to learn. And guy in the wheelchair shook his head and he said, many years ago, I was working for the railroad in North Charleston. And he said, I was in the building, we were working on some cars, fixing them. And the rail car backed up and pinned me against the wall. I was pinned for 2 hours before they could get the car off and get me out. He said, when they did get the car out, both my legs fell and hit the ground. And he said, so that's how I've been. And he said, I've raised 4 kids, 4 children, he said. And they've all gone off to college. He said, but the one thing I wanted that I never could get was I wanted a van. I wanted a van that I could drive as a handicapped person. And the government would never give me that. But it's all right. I'm already tearing up. So the other Mr. Washington said, I was in the service, and he said we were down in, I don't know, Tennessee or Mississippi. And he said they were taking busloads of us up to Washington. And he said we were traveling in the middle of the night and we were going up the highway. And we was hungry. And so the bus pulled over and we all went into one of those restaurants, those kind of spots on the highway road. And so we all went in and sat down. A man come out of the kitchen and he said, all you black boys can go get back on the bus and I'll feed the rest of you. And he said, so our colonel or our whoever was in charge, I don't remember that, said, everybody get up, we're leaving. And we went and got on the bus and we didn't eat. And then they both just stared at me. And I felt so angry for them. I said, I can't believe that. I can't believe you were treated that way. Where is your anger? Well, they were taken aback with what I said. And the Mr. Washington in the wheelchair said, oh no, you can't be angry. And the one standing said, you can't carry that. You can't carry that stuff. You can't. You have to let go of that. Mr. Washington in the wheelchair said, you know about Noah. Well, Noah was told he had to build him an ark. And he had to get all those animals because it was going to flood. And he did it. He did what he was supposed to do. And he said, but go back and read that. And the other Mr. Washington said, yeah, because Noah didn't close the door. The scripture says, and God closed the door. He's the one that knew when to do it. He's the one that had to. Noah didn't have to be mad or worried or any of that stuff about what was going on. God had it. God was going to do it. I sat there for a minute and they both nodded their heads. It was almost as though I could hear them saying, that's all. That's it. Like, this is what you were supposed to get. So I got it. I got up. I just shook their hands. I couldn't even say goodbye. And nodded and got in the car and drove off, went down a couple miles, took some notes about what they had said and went on about my day. As I said, it was 2 days before Martin Luther King's birthday. It's a Saturday. Monday, I leave school and I'm going over to Maisie's house to have a cup of coffee. And it's a very long driveway that they had off the road. And so I get down there and Maisie meets me at the door and she says, call your sister in Maryland. And I'm thinking, what in the world? So I call her and the first words out of her mouth is, Dad is dead. Well, my father hadn't even been sick, but he had a heart attack, cut in the grass, died in my mother's arms, her breathing into his mouth, just like he would have called that one. And I threw the phone down and I ran up their dirt driveway and got just about the river road and it curved around and I went to curve around before I got killed and I tripped and fell. And as I'm lying there in the dirt sobbing, I could hear Mr. Washington say, and God closed the door. God knew when. He had that. And I knew then that there were, kind of like you were saying, Irv, I didn't know anything about that man's background. Of course, I don't think there's a Black person on John's Island that doesn't believe in God. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So that, I think we need to be, and that's why this is so powerful to me. I think we need to be tuned in to whoever the angel is that's sent there. They don't even know that. How in the heck did those guys know to even talk about that? Why would they just immediately go into that? Because God put them there, I think, for me on that particular day.
Mm-hmm.
And he could have not come back.
I almost didn't.
That's what's
Anyway,
always, that's an amazing
That's
story.
very powerful.
Yeah.
it was
Obviously still is.
Absolutely.
it
Did you ever see him again?
no.
See, I've
Never
been out
did.
trying to buy him a truck.
that's where she was going to.
I thought I
No,
found
I
that poor
didn't.
man a van.
Actually, it crept in my mind when she was saying that.
Can we go find
They
him?
want a truck, I'm thinking, these guys are either something unbelievable or they got one of the best scam deals going on.
Oh.
I don't know, I mean, that's not.
No, but that's
I know.
I mean,
true.
but that's.
That's it.
Yeah.
That would be a hell of a scam if the other guy said, oh, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
But see,
But the thing is, you knew that, you knew because of the old circumstances.
Well, and they'd spent their life being treated in
Right.
ways like that
Right.
and had to deal with anger, or they would be just big balls of anger all over the island. And
That's why there
they're
are
so,
some that are big pots. of
well,
anger,
that's
but they
right,
couldn't
absolutely.
handle it.
But these are beautiful people. My God,
Yeah.
they're more beautiful than
I
anybody
think
because they have.
we've spent time a lot in that area and know a lot. We've had a lot of experience with them.
Mhm.
I'll
With
say
those
those kind of
folks.
people. But, you know, they
Oh,
probably
they
have
are
a
just beautiful.
stronger, truer kind of faith than anybody you ever know.
They are just
I mean,
true. They are true.
They believe to their bone
They know.
exactly what you just said. So,
And that's where, what, 9 people were killed when that boy walked into the church in
Yeah.
Charleston to their Bible study. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they all forgave. They all, I mean, it showed testimonies of them saying that. But they were adamant that you can't carry that anger. You cannot. God will close the door.
They are
Don't-
right.
But where I always had come from, Ginger, before that, was more of an area that you're talking about. I need somebody wise in the Lord. I've got to find somebody with qualifications here. And as I drove down that particular road, not being from that area, like a lot of people were, and knowing that area, I was a Baltimore girl. This wouldn't have been my stop. It wouldn't have been my stop.
There are times when you need a wise Christian counselor, though, if it's a Christian issue. I mean, if it's something you're struggling with. When I was trying to come to terms with our relationship, and I mean, I'd been a homophobic Christian, and so I was desperately searching for somebody that I knew who truly knew the Lord, who could help me understand, because all I ever heard was the scriptures that, said I was an abomination. And so I had to find some real answers, not people who were going to just smooth over it and say, oh, God loves you. I had to understand that and be able to believe that. And so I was looking for a Christian perspective. And
I think a spiritual director is important. You have one now.
mhm.
And I mean, I think that's great. We kind of all know, it's almost like all of our friends are kind of in a toolbox, and we know, okay, I can go to you with this one, and I can go to you with this one, and I can go to
You know who
you.
to call.
Yeah. I just need to open the box, and God's already outfitted it.
But I think that sometimes it doesn't even have to be that they say something.
Mhm,
It's their presence.
mhm.
I mean, that's how I am with you. I mean, just, when I'm where you are, it's like a peace, as crazy as you are. To me, it's a feeling of peace, and there are others, and I don't know that it always, and of course, this is me, Christian perspective. I mean, my grandmother Goldman was
Oh, yeah.
quite a woman. I mean, you have to think about the fact that she, bless her, or may she rest in peace. Happy New Year. By the way, she was born and reared in Key West. she was a concert pianist, but the thing was, is that she was educated in only schools were Catholic schools.
Mm.
And she never could quite figure out why they wouldn't let her be a nun. And this is my Jewish grandmother. By the way. And,
I sort of didn't.
and you know, her marriage to my grandfather was not Tevia, if I get a deal for you. But it was close. You know, I mean, it was an arrangement, sort of an arrangement, family arrangement kind of thing.
And he was Jewish?
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
He was just off the boat at Ellis Island, but there's a book written about him, as a matter of fact. Anyway, she had a piece about her that, you know, things, when I was getting married, for example, my father wanted me to get married at the country club and have one of the Florida Supreme Court judges, who was a cousin, Mary Miss, and all this kind of stuff. And I am like, here we go, because I've got a future husband whose father's Baptist. I don't know how we're gonna get through all this. And my own little ecumenical council running around. And my grandmother Goldman turned around. She said, Herbert, this child has been reared in the Episcopal Church. She is the only one who is not, she is only the only one of the ones who were not reared in Judaism that does Judaism and goes to church.
Mhm.
If we are not all praying to the same place, then we're all in trouble. If she wants to get married in the Episcopal Church, then that's where she should get married. She wants to get married out in the middle of the road, that is where she should get married.
She should know these.
I think she should.
That would have been perfect.
Well, I mean, you know,
They could have done that. They could have done this.
wonderfully refined, lovely Jewish woman. And she said, I have no problem going in the Episcopal Church to see with my granddaughter. That's where she wants to be married. And so there we
What a
all,
gift.
well, there we all were. And I had just seen Fiddler for the first time and got absolutely hyperventilated and started to throw up in the middle of it because it was my grandfather's story and there was my Ganga up there on the stage and I'm because it was so historic. And so in the wedding, it wasn't easy in the Episcopal Church to let them sing a secular song. But I had someone sang Sunrise Sunset from Fiddler. And my sister then did it, and so did all my daughter, and all from it's become this thing.
Hello.
But it's it was sort of a tribute to her in a way that
Sure.
you pull in. I mean, she understood better than all the priests that sang, well, she really should just, and the rabbi saying, well, she's really, my grandmother said, funky don't, she can get married wherever she wants. What's the matter with you people?
Yeah.
And so she is just one of those,
Rare.
She
rare.
was wise and wonderful.
Well,
Well,
I
she
hope you
was,
got
but
nice gifts and not tchotchke.
I didn't get any. I probably got a few shots.
Did I say that right?
What's chat? What is
Oh,
it?
Lord, here
There
we
was
go.
another story.
Okay.
It's another story.
But I mean,
Thanks.
she
That's
has always been, could see everything,
And such a model, such a model for just meeting people where they were and giving them the right to be who they are and all those things that
Well, she
And she
always
was
told me that
willing
she's,
to do.
if we're not all praying to the same place, and I've used that line many times, then we're all in trouble. And
That's what I told my grandchildren too.
that's right, because
It's
you
about
have some
love.
too, don't
It's
you?
not about her, it's about love.
That's right. Absolutely.
And you're the one for me that always comes back to that. always, no matter what we're talking about, you can bring it around.
I always say that, I say this a lot because I feel it, but, you know, religion's about rules and all this kind of stuff.
That's right. It's not religion. It's,
Michael
Spirituality.
Curry would say it's all about love.
Yeah.
Well, but
And
spirituality
spirituality.
is about the relationship with God, therefore it's about love.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you remember that? I think I said it in our Curcio group. Religion is for people who are afraid of going to hell, and spirituality is for people who've been there. Who said that?
Sharon.
Long
Sharon
time ago.
Stricker.
Long time ago.
That's a
Yeah, it's like being a member of the broken people. We all have to be broken in a way before we know. I mean, you know, we try to do it our way for most of our lives until we get brought to our knees.
Mhm.
And then we find who God is and what his love is all about.
Well, let me ask y'all to put the shoe on the other foot now. You know, we're kind of talking about, you know, how we have received confirmations, you know, from other people. How do you know if somebody were to come up to you with, Irv, I don't know what to do, and I mean, everything is on the line, whatever it is. My marriage is on the line, my finance, whatever. How do you handle that? How do we handle that as the person being asked, knowing that, you know,
You don't have any answers.
that, I mean, as soon as they ask, it's like, well, I never thought of that before. I never thought about your finances before, so how in the world would I know? I mean, how have you handled that?
See, I used to be clergy. I mean, seriously, I was a CPA, and a CPA becomes clergy. I mean this. I'm not kidding around.
Like a bartender.
Well, maybe a little deeper level. I like it. But in some ways not. I mean,
I mean, you know, a listener.
right, as a listener, but when you listen, you've gotta, I think you do give feedback in some way. Maybe you give feedback by not saying anything, but
True.
feedback.
Yeah.
And I do think you have to be a listener, and you have to be, I think you have to have love in your heart to be effective at it. I think you have to, you know, you can't tell them what to do normally, but you can steer them and make them think about some things that they might not have thought about. And at the end of the day, everybody's got to make their own decisions. So,
And then there might be those times when you have no idea what kind of advice to give. It's out of your realm. It's not, in
but
your
the
case, it's
clergy
not
part of my role was not
advice.
particularly about finances.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I mean, they were there because of that. But
Right.
It wasn't
Right.
about that
Right.
usually. I mean, that would just be
It has,
being an
but
advisor.
it has to become a heart thing.
But being the clergy part is something else.
You said the two key words that I think are most important, and that's listen and love.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of my favorite lines that I heard at a conference one time was, listen with fascination. Listen with fascination when somebody talks. You know, a lot of times.
That way you can hear.
Yes, a lot of times our
And
head
You felt heard.
goes to, oh yeah, that happened to me. You know, and I'm trying to pull up my story. Forget your story. Look that person deep in the eyes and listen with fascination. They wouldn't be telling it if it wasn't real important to them. Does that make sense?
And they wouldn't be telling you if they didn't think you cared.
Exactly. It's the listen and love. You said both words right off the bat. You're a good student, you get an A.
You're what?
A good student, you get an A. Would y'all agree with that, with what Irv's saying about the listen and love?
Oh, yeah.
I had a fellow teacher that I mean, she was the type that I knew if I went and sat and talked to her. You could just see she was so intent on
Mhm.
not what was going on in her head,
Right.
but of listening to me. And what a feeling of comfort that gives you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You just remind me, we had an accounting firm. I had this one particular tax partner. When I really was working something that had a tax angle to it or something, I would go sit with Ralph in his office. And I would say, just, give me a few minutes. I just want to run this thing by you. I would start talking. I went in looking for his advice or his direction as to what to do with it was. And I did this many, many, many times. I walked out of the door and I realized I've got the answer. And Ralph never said a word.
Now, that's good.
I mean that.
Yeah, no.
I mean, it just, so I guess what that really boils down to, if you sit and you take the time and articulate what you think
Right.
your issue is.
Organize your stuff.
Doesn't even have to be organized necessarily, but you have to
I'm in
have some
trouble.
Get it
organization
out.
to be able to say it. But just simply by walking through it, you find a lot of the answers that are in here. And just by listening, he would get that out of me, and I'd say, "I got this, man." He'd shake his head. He'd never said a word for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
But because you felt that, I mean, you were being received by that person, you were being
Oh, yeah.
validated by that person. I mean, so often we don't think that happens. I know, it's funny, you walk by somebody in the hall, like a coworker or something, and you go, "Hey, how you doing?" And it could be that,
Never.
I mean, it got to where when that happened to me, I started saying things like, "My grandmother just died and I'm facing a bankruptcy." And and then the person would keep on, they're still walking on. And I would yell behind them, "Did you hear me?"
I'm so happy for you.
You're absolutely right, Morris. That's, I mean, so why say that? Don't walk by me and say that if you're not prepared to sit there for a half an hour. And you're right, that's what you get. What else? Any other comments? Any comment on today, period?
Well, there was happened at the barn, and I know your remark to me was like, "Hey, could you wrap this for me?" I thought, she thinks I've been talking to this lady too long. So move on. But I was back in the toy department looking for a puzzle or something. I don't know. This woman comes up, she starts, she had logs, one of those logs.
Lincoln
Lincoln
logs.
logs.
And she wanted to know if I thought that if those were too old timey for grandchildren or not. Why do I look old enough for you to make that decision? I mean, I was starting to say, "You don't look any older than I do." So we started talking about these Lincoln logs, and my husband, oh no. And we kept talking, and then she said, "Well, I have a grandson, blah, 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 blah." And she said, "Then I have a granddaughter that's getting married. No, a grandson that's getting married." And I feel so bad because the bride's mother died 2 years ago, and I'm thinking,
Is that the one she was gonna get the Lincoln Logs?
no, that was quite different. That was quite different. But I was standing there in the toy department of the barn, and I don't know this woman, but she just walked up and said, "Lincoln Logs."
She shared her life.
I mean,
That's right.
she started telling me, and then she said, she went to Auburn. She and her fiance went to Auburn. And I looked at her and I said, "Well, it's been nice talking to you. You'll have to go find someone else to talk to." 'Cause I went to Alabama, I don't want to hear it. But so we're walking up to the front. She's telling me, and then she says, "Well, they live in this little town in Alabama called Opelika."
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's where all my family is in Opelika. And my son is the director of the theater. Ours and my sisters, and all this and they're all there. And I
But
thought,
you had to listen long enough till she got to the point where there was a connection.
well, I kept listening and listening.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I'm going on and
That's what I
on.
mean.
So I said, "Well, wait a minute." So I stopped and I called my sister and I said, "Do you know so?" She goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" "Yes, of course I know. I see her every." Because her granddaughter-in-law to be is,
In theater.
well, not theater. No, she's in a medical nurse thing. And my sister does. And I said, "Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that I said, because this lady's standing here next to me. And at this point, we've moved to the front of the store, and she says to me, well, where have you been?
Listening.
This lady turned around and she said, it's what I love about Southern. She said, I'm sorry, did I take you away from your job? She said, and she said, and I really have to be somewhere, but we just started talking, and I just was enjoying sharing the time. And I said, it's okay. She'll only fine me $5 for this. Talking about her doing something crazy.
It's amazing that just asking about Lincoln Logs could lead to all.
Absolutely.
I know.
I know, but I mean, that was so, because then she went through all this stuff about how she felt bad about this girl that was getting married because her mother had died 2 years ago, and how she didn't know exactly how to help fill in. And I'm just like, but
No, you did better than that, or she would
Yeah.
have kept talking.
Yeah, yeah.
well, but the thing was, is that I was so totally removed from the story
Yeah.
that she could say something to me. Why she thought she could, I don't know, but that she could say something to me that she wanted to say, but everybody else had strings and tentacles into that story. And that, she was worried about, how to act and what to do and how emotional it was going to be and all this kind
Well,
of
she must have seen something in you that you were listening, and
Either
she
that
could
or
just.
the last 5 people she'd ask about the Lincoln Log question.
Not either that or she's going to Alabama.
Well, I think it's interesting how Lincoln Logs, you can build on it.
No.
At any rate,
Very definitely intended.
before we leave, let me just make sure there wasn't like some critical point I wanted to
It's
make.
gonna be amazing if you turn over back and ask a question about
About Lincoln Logs.
Well, you never know what's going to be the icebreaker, do you?
That's right.
Well, this was a quote I found somewhere, and somehow to me it tied in with the feelings that I had going forward with this. Don't doubt the profound influence that others can have on your life, or the immense influence you can have on others.
That's
Don't
true. Certainly.
Doubt it.
Apropos
I thought that was great.
That sounds like something out of John Lyric.
Well,
Out of who?
I have a friend that's he's written several books that are fabulous. And when he was 9 years old, he was playing around with a gas can in his garage. And I don't have to tell you that didn't go well. Ended up burning himself over 99% of his body. His odds of living were less than 1%. But he somehow survived all that with a lot of help from friends and others. He's a motivational speaker, but a very, very spiritually based, I would say. He doesn't present it in those terms, but you can tell he is. So
and the profound influence he's had on you.
Yeah.
Because I would say 5 out of 7 times I'm around you, you have a quote from him,
Mhm.
or something comes to mind. He's really had an influence on you.
How did you meet him?
well, somebody told me about his book, his first book, which was called On Fire, by the way. It's a great title for it if you read it.
Mhm.
So I read the book and really loved the book. And then my firm, I was retired by then, but my firm had him to come to be a speaker at a firm-wide thing. We were all over the South, but so we got a lot of people that come together once a year. And he came to speak to that group one time. I met him then. It was like, I spent 2 minutes with him. We've had a little follow-up, but spent 2 minutes with him, and I felt like he was my friend.
That's
So,
awesome.
He's one of the broken people. I mean, he's been through the fire
yeah.
and all the garbage that we put on to protect ourselves and hide, and it's stripped away.
Mhm.
And then you can relate to the real person, and it's powerful.
It just brings up one other quote, for me, and that's, oh my gosh, how could I blank on his name? I went into the woods
Um, um,
because I wanted to live deliberately and not realize when it came to an end that I had never really lived at all. There's a
Thoreau.
guy, Thoreau, Henry David.
Yeah.
Henry David. So I challenge all of us to live intentionally, live deliberately. Anyway,
Can I ask you two questions that maybe you can answer quickly, in the interest of time?
well, hold on, let me do it quick then. Yes, and maybe.
So the two questions on the back page, who is your Eli and who is your Samuel? Give it a quick stab from your perspective. I'd love to hear what you say.
There was a nun, Sister Philip Mary, when I was in 8th grade, and she was the Eli, and had me reading books and having great discussions. And my parents were having a house built, and I had to take a public bus home every day, but it didn't come until 2 hours after we got out of school. So, I helped her set up the altar. I did, and we talked, and it was pretty amazing. Now, I would say it's Maisie, and has been for a long time. And then who is my Samuel?
Somebody to
And I was gonna say, anybody that needs to talk, I need to listen. And I don't even know who they are, but I'm open to who they can be.
And she's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's why I asked you that question. I felt like you could give me a very quick and meaningful answer that helped me understand questions.
Well, anybody else want to throw in on that? How about you, Earth? How might you have answered it when you were reading it and thinking about it?
I don't know. I don't respond to questions that seem to ask you who was your favorite this or best this. I don't do that very well. That's not a cop out. It's just I don't do it because I want to find the best answer to that question, not
Mhm.
an answer.
Me too. I can't find
So
the right
But
answer.
have you had one or two? that
Yeah,
you
I've
might
had-
Say was in
In the running.
yeah, my dad would be one of them, and I had a friend, an older friend, who was also very a real leader in our community, and he was also a very close client of mine. A lot of times we just go almost like the tax partner I was talking about a minute ago. I mean, we worked on things together, but he was the kind of guy I could go and sit down and talk to, and he might not say much, but
You got your
and I was
answer.
comfortable. I'd call him up on the phone. Can I come see you?
Mm.
I'd run over. And he was a busy guy, but if he wasn't tied up at some meeting or something, he would always see me.
Mm.
And it was like that.
That's good. You're lucky.
Yep.
That's
But you have to be open to doing it too.
Mhm.
I'm just glad Eli had Samuel, because I kind of feel sorry for him, because obviously his sons weren't.
That's right. Yeah.
And
Which
you
is
know,
very
good job
true.
with Samuel.
Usually it's your
Yeah,
own
and
kids
you know-
sometimes that are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, neither were Samuel's sons. as the story goes on.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but they had each other and that was a meaningful time. And, poor Eli, I mean, first of all, everything that he had lived for, goes in that one sentence. Well, tell me what God said. And then,
And be gentle, please.
and then in no time, I mean, his two sons and Eli died on the same day. The two sons die in battle. Eli falls off a chair and breaks his neck. I think that's kind of crazy story, but that's how he died. He fell off a chair and broke his neck.
It explains how
What you-
three of them died though. That's why it was written that way.
Mhm.
Strange
Remember,
ways
that's
of
how they
God.
do the Bible. Sometimes
Yeah.
things happen. And listen, why did that happen? Let's explain it.
Reminds me, y'all remember the name Yule Gibbons?
Yeah,
I do, yeah.
Yule Gibbons.
Can't think who he is.
I can't even.
It'll come clear probably.
Okay.
I was riding into work one day. I was just the NPR. And
Oh.
it came on in the news and said, we have some sad news to tell you today that Yule Gibbons died today of natural causes.
He was a nature guy.
He was a natural.
He was a nature guy. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, that's right. It went right out of my head.
That's right. That's who he is.
I think.
Sharon
got it.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, let me
Of
wrap this
natural
up.
causes.
Father, we thank you for this time together and just ask that you help us to go forward, living intentionally and deliberately. And give each of us this day an angel to entertain unaware. Pray these things in the name of our friend, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks